Welcome to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, where history meets prophecy. I'm Elder Michael.
And I am Officer Charmaine.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is an exciting presentation we have for you today. This presentation is about the history of the Bible. And Officer Charmaine, there's so much about this that it really gets me when we get into it, I'm sure. But first of all, ladies and gentlemen, this is an interactive presentation, so please text us your questions and our comments, and all your support, of course, is always welcome. So, Officer Charmaine, I'm going to turn it over to you to get started.
Well, first of all, I want to say peace, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We really look forward to these sessions where we can dig deep into history and just look at how history meets prophecy. Because sometimes, we need that little extra oomph, and it really is quite interesting to see what's happened throughout history. History is important because it helps us, hopefully prevents us from doing the things that we're not supposed to do and help us to do the things that we are supposed to do. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. As Elder Michael said, this is an interactive session. So we really do hope that you will put your comments in the chat, and please don't forget to, as the message says, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure that everybody hears about this message. I just have to say that the messages over the weekend was fantastic, and it kind of leads into what we're doing today. And in addition to that, even last week's message was wonderful. So I hope that we can all, come on the same page and understand the Bible.
That's what I like, Officer Charmaine. That's what I like about what we do, because everything connects, right? History connecting with prophecy, and regardless of the subject that is being presented, whether it's Friday or Saturday or any day of the week, there is a place for it within the pages of the Bible, and that is what we're going to delve into today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as Elder Michael said, we are going to be talking about the Bible, in particular the King James version of the Bible.
Yes.
And I know many of you are thinking, how did we get to this point? But before that, let's look at the first slide. We have a slide here. So why people do not read the Bible, in particular, why do the children of Jacobites, why do they not read the Bible?
Yes.
So here are some of the points. And if you have any points why you think people do not read the Bible, please put it in the chat, share that information as well, because it would be really quite interesting to see. Right. We don't have all of the points here, but I'm sure you have some that's not here as well.
Right.
So one of the things is that it was written by a white blank man. So a lot of people, they feel that, they're not going to read this because of who it was written by. But we're going to show you later on that it goes a lot deeper than that.
Maybe now we could just give a little bit of a clue as to whether that statement is true or false. What do you think?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, because
get into it, but
that statement is false. What this man did, regardless of whether he was white or blue, he made the translation, right? He authorized the translation. He brought it together at a time when we could not do it for ourselves. So rather than criticizing him, we should be giving the glory and the praises to our God.
So I think because, when I look at this, and I was speaking about this earlier, I look at this in correlation to what happened to our forefathers when they went into Babylon.
Right.
So from Nebuchadnezzar to Darius,
yes.
There are so many people that were instrumental in our lives during that time. Likewise, you'll see the same when we go through some of the information that we currently have. So once again, if you are just joining us, we are going to be speaking about the Bible, the history of the Bible, where it came from, how it came about. But right now we're looking at why people do not read the Bible. And, some people don't even believe it's true. They believe that not all the information is true. Some of it is true, some of it is not. I don't know who gave them the authority to say what is true and what's not, but that's one of the points. I've heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and I look at that and I just laugh, as I just did, because it's total nonsense. Because
Mm-hmm.
the only way that you will know what is true and what is not pertaining to the Bible is from an Israelite, a qualified Israelite teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the Bible represents the word of our Father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. There's a lot more there that we could get into later, but let's go on.
Right. There was a comment that said that some people find it difficult to read the Old English. Well, yes, maybe that's the case. They find the King James Version difficult to understand. My thing is, if you don't mind me saying, I wonder, what do you do when it comes to Shakespeare? Do you just, I've not seen that rewritten like 100,000 times, so that people could understand it.
Right.
Shakespeare is Shakespeare, and the beauty is in the prose of the language, how it
Exactly.
was written. So
Yes.
people's not changing that. And the Bible and, the King James Version in particular and Shakespeare were around the same time. Anyways, that's another story.
No, it's a very good point, because it's a point that we've made for our elder Shadrach has made for almost 40 years. And people go to acting school to learn to speak that British dialect back in the day of Shakespeare. And again, it it speaks to the accuracy of the time or of the presentation, whether they're doing it on stage or not, because you're recreating an environment that was very conducive to the presentation that the actors are doing at the present time. You're going back to what, the 14th, 15th century to create an atmosphere. That is what gives acting its relevance, right? And acting, of course, is also educational. So it's poetic. I mean, it's musical. There's so much that it's philosophical. We can go all over the world from that perspective. The same
Yeah.
is true of the Bible, and we will break that down as we go forward.
Yes, we have another comment here from Mo. And he says, I think a lot of people don't read the Bible simply because they believe in the Big Bang Theory and therefore disregard creation. Genesis 1 immediately triggers cognitive dissonance. Yes, perhaps. Perhaps, you are right. People are moving away from religion per se, for lack of a better term. They're moving away from the idea of a creator, and they are moving towards the scientific explanation of, our existence, which
Right.
is unfortunate, but
I will say this though, that Big Bang Theory is very perverted. I will say no more.
okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what's in your mind at this point in time, but I'll refrain.
Yes, let's look at the next comment.
There is a
It says the Bible has been misread to people for so long that they don't feel that they need to read it for themselves. Maybe, maybe not. I believe that if you really want to get to the bottom of any subject matter, you should do your best to be well informed as possible. So if that
right.
calls for reading or watching a movie, just educate yourself, because at the end of the day, we have to make a decision for or against the subject matter. And it's
Yeah.
important to know how that material came about in the first place.
And, as we always say, and this is the one reason why we say, don't just sit here and take our word for it.
Right.
Go out there and do your own research, because,
Exactly.
we've gone out there, we've collected all this information. We're not making it up. We've
Right.
gone out there, we've compiled all the information that is out there to present to you. But
Right.
don't take our word for it. Go and do your own research. It's very important.
It's very
We don't want to get into that trap again where, as you said, people's reading to you or, telling you things and it's not correct. So please go find it for yourself. And it's not just this, anything. Find out for yourself. Very important.
It is. And what I like to say pertaining to the Bible, it's important that we stay in our lane. The Bible is not just, it's not just another book. It's a highly spiritual book. There's history and there's culture pertaining to our Israelite royal family. It is important that we, as descendants of the Israelites, get to know how, why, when, where, as much as possible. Of course, there are certain prices that have to be paid, and I'm speaking philosophically here, that there's certain things that we have to do in order to go to another level of or to gain another level of understanding. And this is part and parcel of what we're presenting as well. The other comment says, some say it puts them to sleep. Well, maybe they're not ready to understand what is there, because it's very exciting actually. And as we unfold some of these pieces, you will hopefully get the excitement that we share.
Yes. It goes to, there are many contradictions. This is one thing that I've always used to hear. Oh, there's so many contradictions. How do you know that it's really telling the truth? And as you said, it's maybe you have the spirit of slumber, and you can't get through this. You can't understand what's actually written. And we have another point here. They think it's a Christian thing and want nothing to do with Christianity. That's a really very good point, actually. A lot of people do, for those that have been enlightened, for a lack of a better term, they do relate it to Christianity. And the funny thing is, when you do your research, you will see it will say the Christian Bible. It's like, what is the Christian Bible? It's so irritating. But you're right. Some people do think it's Christian, and that's why they don't read it.
Right.
Others believe that it's a white man's book.
Yes.
It's like, guys, you've got to get over the color thing. Seriously.
Really?
Get over the color thing.
Yes. It has no place in our culture. Because what people don't understand, maybe one day we will look at the origin of the black man, origin of the white man,
of race, or the
origin of race. And I'll tell you right now, though, from my research, I found it goes back to the 15th century Spain, and it was a Christian invention of the black man and the white man. Now, don't get me wrong, I've made this point several times before. All men and women, all humans, have been created from the dust of the earth, meaning the first man and woman were created like that from the God of Israel, and they look black. Now, that has nothing to do
with facts, right? You can't dispute it. Exactly. there wasn't different color earth, to make different color people. It was just one soil,
right?
And it was the richest and darkest soil.
He chose the best.
Right, he chose the best.
Yeah.
And that's just the fact. That's just reality. So
I tell people today, if you want to get the best soil, go to your local store and ask for a bag of humus for your garden, and look at it before you buy it. It's probably going to be the darkest, the blackest soil you've ever seen, because it's the most fertile. If you spit in it, it will grow. So be careful. And so, but my point here, though, is it is not a black or white thing. It's melanin. And every human being has melanin in just about every organ of the body. But that's more of a biological subject, and we will discuss that another time. But right now, some of us have more in the skin than others, but that shouldn't deter you from being aware of the fact that every human being on the planet is rich in melanin. Case closed.
Some more so than others.
Yes. Some of us are smarter than others.
Right.
That's why I'm here with you, because you're smarter than me, off the Charmaine, and it's beautiful.
Anyways,
I'm drawing secret.
Okay.
Let's tell the world a secret. The reason I'm on here is because I'm learning from you, but you don't know it. Secret disclosure.
Yeah, well, I'm learning from you too, Mr. Professor. Anyway, so we have here, it was used to enslave Black people, and that goes to the whole Christian thing. People believe it's a Christian book, so they don't read it. Others believe that it was used to enslave us, and that's why they don't read it. And others believe that it's as I said before, is difficult to understand. So these are just some of the points, and I'm sure you have many more
Yeah.
reasons why
I
people do
will
not
I will
read.
say this though about that enslavement thing. That is
Yeah.
true. And that we have to
Yeah.
analyze very carefully. That is
Mm.
why you cannot listen to every and anyone who teaches from the Bible. The Bible is a book written for Israelites to teach from.
Uh, okay,
Yeah.
so let's take them to the next slide, and then
Okay, good.
you
Thank you.
can go into that.
That's my
The
entree.
next, right? Go on, go on,
Okay.
Elder Michael.
So yes, it's written a book written the authorized 1611 version of the King James Bible is a collection of books written by the children of Israel for the children of Israel about the children of Israel. We've made that point almost for 40 years since our elders started teaching us from the Bible. That point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? These are stories, these are biographies, these are, examples of people's lives,
Yeah.
how they lived, what they did, there's the sacrifices they made, the miracles that they came across, what the God of Israel did for them. These are an expression of people's lives, their culture, and it's been presented in this format. And as you will see as we go along, writing was very important to the children of Israel. So
Yeah.
let's
You know,
um
what I like about the Bible, a lot of our viewers probably they watch our presentations on Saturdays, and
mm,
I'm always trying to rap from the Bible, but I failed miserably. Failed miserably, okay? And the reason I want to rap from the Bible is because first of all, those lyrics are magnificent. Number two, when the God of Israel is speaking, whether it's speaking openly or speaking through the prophets or the Psalms or what have you, it is so melodious. There because there's music in the Bible, there's poetry in the Bible, there's history in the Bible. We can go on. There's chemistry in the Bible, there's culture, there's agriculture. There's so much there. We as individuals pick our favorite subject and let that be your entree. Let that be the
yeah,
key. You see? And that's what it's all about.
exactly. You made a really good point. It contains everything that we need.
Yes.
The collection of books, which were first on scrolls.
Right.
Once upon a time, there there weren't any books, there weren't any scrolls. But
Exactly.
the miracle was that everybody understood, or people of the time understood, this was before Noah's time. They understood exactly what was required in order to serve the God of Israel. Whether they served him or not, they understood what was required. And an excellent example of this, it wasn't written, but the instruction was to Noah was to take 7 of the clean animals into the ark,
Yes.
right? So it was only 2 of all the others,
The
but
unclean.
7 of the clean. And
Yes.
to me, I was like floored when I read that for the
Yes.
first time, It's like 7 of the clean animals. And that wasn't even written. We didn't even get to Leviticus yet,
Yeah.
But yet still there was an understanding of clean and unclean. There was a separation right from the get-go.
That is true. And even today, that point is not known worldwide because I think they put it into music or poetry,
Yes,
what have
the
you.
2 by 2,
Yeah,
exactly.
2 by 2. And
Yeah.
everybody's
They
got
weren't,
that in their head,
well,
right?
they weren't speaking to Israelites, right? Because we
Exactly.
couldn't just have 2 of everything. We had to have 7 of the clean.
That's a good example of what we were trying to say earlier. If you're not listening to an Israelite teacher, a qualified Israelite teacher, then you're going to be misled as far as the Bible is concerned. Because,
Exactly.
yeah, because there's so much depth to it that, if people will take whatever they find appropriate and use it, but we're the only ones that are authorized to teach. That's the key.
Right. So I would say, Elder Michael,
Mhm.
I would say that the first idea of a Bible, which is a collection of books,
Mhm. Like
came
a
from
library,
sorry?
like a
Well,
library.
right.
Yeah.
The first idea of the Bible came from the time of Moses. What do you say?
I agree with that because
Mhm.
he wrote those 5 books and they into one, if you could.
But even before that, during
Okay.
the time the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
The command that was, and you know what I was reading?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was reading this in Genesis, right?
Mhm.
But then it was written later on, right?
Yes.
It first was given, the instructions was given what you should and shouldn't do,
Right.
but then it was written.
Yes.
So the verbal came first, and then the written word,
Yes.
and this is where we get our scrolls from.
Yeah. And you're right. To your point, when Moses came down with he had the testaments written by the hand of the God of Israel, and this, of course, they got broken, and he had to start to go back and get a copy. And so it's beautiful that all of this was there at the beginning to set the tone for us, not only to learn to write, but also to read and to comprehend. And he's not writing and reading about things out in the world. He's writing and reading about things that pertain to us, because we are going to be serving him. And I like to make this point also. I think of the Bible as an instructions manual. Now,
Yeah.
if you have a computer, for example, right, it comes with an instructions manual. If you have an iPhone or what have you, it comes with an instruction manual. And whenever there's a problem, you go to the manual. To order to use that instrument effectively, you read the manual. An automobile. So go ahead.
Okay, so I heard, and this is something that I've heard a long time ago,
Right.
that the Bible is an acronym which stands for basic before leaving the earth.
Would
And
you
I
say that
thought,
again,
oh, that's pretty cool.
Say that again, please, because you chipped.
Basic. So that's basic instructions before leaving earth.
Wow.
So it goes to what you're saying.
Right.
It is a list of instructions. There are instructions in there how to do things. There was instructions how to prepare the temple, and how to prepare the altar, and how to build the temple. There were so many different instructions for us. Even the colors that we wear.
Exactly.
The colors, how the garments were supposed to look. The borders of blue.
Right.
Everything is written there. The instructions. Beautiful.
There are also instructions as to what we should eat and not eat. As simple as that. When we should worship, for example, to be most effective, to communicate. So these are very, very crucial to our well-being. And because the reason I said instructions manual, and the manufacturing of a product, we have to stop and think, who created man and woman? And why would he not give them instructions on how to exercise their freedom, how to do or get the best out of their being that is within? Of course, it's not going to be overnight. This is something that we have to learn. And sometimes you have to interact with other people in order to show your skill sets, but the learning process is ours. We have to get involved and start the process. So think of the God of Israel then as our Father, and he is giving his children specific instructions on how to be the best children on earth. Just think about that. And the Bible is where those instructions are written.
And one of the most important thing, and this is one of the reasons why we're having this discussion. There are many reasons why we're having this discussion, but one of the reasons why we're having this discussion is the whole idea of language. Now, one of the things that, if you guys, I'm telling you, if you go back and look at our list, you'll see that there are many, many subject matters that we touch on. I'm not talking about this particular forum. I'm talking about the Fridays and Saturdays. But there's one that our elder, for example, brought to light, and this is the Christ. Who is the Christ? Who was the Christ? Who was Jesus? And he was very clear, and it was beautifully done. But yet still, and for the life of me, I am blown away. People will still write stuff. They'll still write information, and they'll talk about Yahweh and Yeshua, but how do you communicate? How is the information getting to anyone when you're not following the simple rules that's being put out there? And the reason why I'm saying this, Elder Michael, and for all those that are listening, just, and please put your comments in the chat. The
Mhm.
reason why I'm saying this is because we have today the King James Version of the Bible, which is what we subscribe to.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
But prior to that, and guys, like I said, do your work, do your history, do your research. Prior
Yes.
to that, there was a book called the Septuagint. Is that it? The Septuagint?
Septuagint. Yeah.
Okay. This book was written in Greek. And the reason why it was written in Greek was that the majority of the children of Israel in that time, during that time, and this was around 200, 250 BCE,
Mhm.
during that time, the majority of the children of Israel spoke Greek.
Yes.
Okay, and then that was simply the reason why. So nobody went through the scriptures at the time to start changing words to say, oh, this is not Christ, this is Yahushua, or this is
Right.
it was very simply put. The book was written. Our books were translated into Greek because the majority of the children of Israel at the time spoke Greek.
Right.
And that's it. Selah and Selah,
Yeah.
amen. But
You know. Yeah.
you can actually look at how this was actually put together. These were Israelites that were doing this. So if they were the ones that were putting this book together, they didn't go out of their way and said, well, that's not actually Hebrew. Hebrew should be, this or that. These were Israelites. They knew this stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're learning this stuff now, but they knew it. And they put together what they knew into a book so that everybody else could understand. And here you see that there were 72 Israelites, Septuagint, the
Septuagint.
term okay, sorry. The term means 70, but there were 72 from each, 6 from each of the tribes that
Right.
wrote this for the Ptolemite of
Yeah.
Egypt.
Yes.
So you see that it's already happened once before, and you see how everything came together, which
Mhm.
to me is incredible.
It is incredible because it's like you said, the same process is going to unfold with the King James Version, or similar, I should say. But
Similar, yeah,
yeah, it comes back to the language factor. And, I never really did care for English personally until I had a good understanding of the Bible. Because then when I see the God of Israel and the way he works, it's so beautiful. The wisdom is so magnificent. You wonder, like, how did he know? Where did he go to school? Who was his professor? you know, because he took, here's a people, our forefathers, that have to be punished for their disobedience. They have to be enslaved, right? But the same people who are going to initiate that enslavement, they're the ones that are going to be chosen to make the translation. But
yes,
they don't know that, what they're doing. They're just so excited to do it. And I
yeah,
and I like that because
yeah,
you can see the spirit working with them. Right now, they think that they're the chosen people and they don't want to mess up. They want to get this translation made perfectly, right? But
yeah.
they are the
And
ones. Go
you
ahead.
know what, Elder Michael, you hit the nail on the head. And
Beautiful.
this was such a perfect plan from
Mm,
our Father, the God of Israel, because he knew exactly how it was going to play out.
mhm.
And you look at history, but even look at the biblical history, and you'll see the same thing happening. The God of Israel said to Jeremiah, go to the children, go to the king and tell him that this is what's going to happen. And
Mhm.
you guys, you're going to be enslaved. And this is just the way it is. And, don't fight it. Just follow the course of history, or follow the instructions. And then you will see what's going to happen. They
Right.
heard it and they rebelled. A lot of them rebelled. But what happened? We were taken into Babylon. But it wasn't a harsh thing. It wasn't like, the slavery that we just came out of. It was a situation whereby, you were taken. Nebuchadnezzar, he was even looked upon as God's son. The God of Israel favored him,
Yeah.
even though he was someone of a different nation, right? And he looked at us and he looked after us. You know, he took the best of us and fed us and gave us, you know, Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, all of them, they received great honor from Nebuchadnezzar and his people, and that went on all the way to King Darius. You know, so there were several different players in this game. You
Right.
know,
And
and
to your point, though, Officer
but
Charmaine,
the God of Israel had that plan. He laid
yeah,
out the plan for
yes,
us. And why wouldn't he do it again?
yeah, agree. And to your point, Officer Charmaine, the God of Israel not only did unfold that mystery, but you had a situation where Daniel played such a formidable role, even in the Babylonian or Chaldean um, kingdom, because he was the first vice president. He was the one who could tell the dreams to Nebuchadnezzar. You know, nobody else, none of the Chaldean priesthood could do it. So the payback was magnificent. Now we come fast forward here, and we have a situation where the British are going to be the ones now who are going to make the enslavement, but they're going to be the ones making the translation as well. What people don't know, what they don't understand, is our forefathers went into the UK, back then it was just called England, in 1066 with William from France. So,
But before that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
somebody's asking a question here.
okay.
Um, what is it?
What is
It
the
says,
Greek language or the Koine language that the Israelites spoke? Was it the Greek language or the Koine? I think it's a similar because
it's a
it's
similar
also
language. It
it's the same
is.
thing. Yeah. And keep in mind that what is called Greek is a dialect of the Canaanite language. That's what it is, because it was Cadmus, the Canaanite, that took the alphabet over to Greece. And at that time, there were no consonants, right? There were no, sorry, they were all consonants. There were no vowels. That's the point I was making. So it's a whole different understanding. With the Greeks, they had to add vowels to it for them to get it. And not only that, they used to read from right to left, but with the Greeks, it was changed to left to right. So whether it
Right.
was a whole different spiritual format, or they couldn't understand it, or they made it easy for, I don't know. But the point is, that's what happened, and you can do the research and you will see exactly what we're talking about. So
And I think another point, Elder Michael, just even going back to what you were actually saying,
yeah,
when you look at when the scriptures were written, you know, there was also Israelite influence. There was also always Israelite influence involved in the writing of the scriptures. And
yes,
you know, I know you spoke before about the Carthage and the
yes,
Nazarenes during that time, you
that's
know,
right.
and how they actually started to prepare, you know, some of the books as we know it today.
Correct.
You know,
A
which and
very It's a very important point that people overlook. They a lot of Christianity would tell you about, they call him a saint. I don't know how they did that, but again, they're out of their lane, so anything is possible. But Augustine, right? But nobody ever talks about Elder Cyprian or Elder Donatus from Numidia,
Mhm.
North Africa, Carthage. They're the ones that issued the authority to make the New Testament translation. They're the ones that made the translation from Greek and Aramaic into Latin. And this is
Yeah.
not the Vulgate Latin, which we'll get to later, which is a whole
Yep.
different situation. But as you were saying, Officer Charmaine, the educational factor of our foreparents had an influence in all the translations, right?
Exactly.
So, as I was saying earlier, we went into England in 1066. We had
Hmm.
a major role in the establishment of the British educational system. Major.
But but before that, how did we even get there? You know,
Right.
you're looking at this is a time of William the Conqueror during the
Yes.
Battle of Hastings,
Yes.
and the Israelites were in France at that time.
Right.
And after William the Conqueror won the Battle of Hastings and went to England, into Britain, they went with him.
Yes.
They went
As
with
a
him.
matter of
So,
fact, from my research, I found out that they went with him because he needed funds to
yeah,
pay his expenses, and they
exactly.
had the money.
They actually funded the war, the battle.
There you go.
They actually funded it.
Yeah,
So yeah, and it, helped to fight it. So
right.
you look, we had a major part in the discovery of
Yeah.
England.
And the establishment of Oxford University. And I tell people, go and check your historical records. You'll see
Mhm.
there's still Moses Hall at Oxford. There's still Jacob's Hall at Oxford. And there's Lombard Hall. Now, the Lombard, we don't talk about too much because it's not biblical per se. However, and I was telling this to Officer Castrelli earlier this week, Lombard or Lombardy came from Italy and the
Mhm.
southern part of Italy, and that's where a lot of our forefathers lived, and that's one of the names
Mhm.
that was prominent in Italy at that time. So those three halls are in at Oxford today. My point,
Right,
though, in raising this, bringing this point up, is the fact that all the translators of the 54, I think it came down to 47 eventually, were either directly or indirectly educated by our foreparents. All of them.
right.
Even James himself.
Right. But even when you look at it, it's on the next slide when it talks about Merton College. Uh,
Yes.
when our forefathers lived in Oxford, or when they were residing in Oxford,
Yeah.
they were actually setting up like centers of education. So they were teaching their own. This was
Yes.
a place where they can teach the laws, the statutes, and commandments.
Right.
And so Merton College came from that. Merton College was one of the first three colleges that was established,
Right.
which formed what we know as Oxford University.
That's right.
So this is the history of this. When you think about it, our forefathers, our God is great, and you
Amazing.
can see how instrumental our forefathers were in establishing this place of learning. This is where it came from, because learning was so integral to us as Israelites.
It's such a beautiful process because when we went to England, most of the British at that time weren't able to read and write, and the most of the education was centered around the court, the King's Court. And
Mhm.
James, of course, was very well educated. The point I'm making, though, is the fact that we were able to bring together all that educational factor. Now, I'm not trying to be prejudiced here, but here's the point I'm making. Of all the people on the planet, one people were instructed by the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob to teach your sons, teach your daughters about these
Right.
laws, statutes, and commandments. And it went from generation to generation to generation. This is
Mhm.
something that we did. Nobody else had to do that but us. So we had to make sure we're able to read. We had to make sure we're able to write. We had to make sure we're able to teach. And we had to make sure that we understood what we were teaching. This is something that was unique to us. The others, they had to go to school to learn. And even then, you had to be aristocratic, of the elite to do that. But we did it regardless of whether we were begging in the streets or whether we were sitting on the throne, because that was part of the system, the law that we had to obey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's so funny because when we go back to the whole idea of language, we did a session on it as well. The reason why it is so important to actually follow the course of the language that's actually presented is because the tetragrammaton, for example, it's still something that's been disputed today, and yet still people are using it. They're saying, well, it sounds like Yahweh and it should be Yahweh, or it's Yah, whatever the case is. The fact is, regardless of what you think it is, the name of the God of Israel was actually translated to a name that we actually understand today,
right,
even though many people don't look at it as a name,
right,
because he said, I am that I am. Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me unto you. So he said, this is my name forever. So that name was actually translated through, and there was no misunderstanding with that. With all the other stuff that people use, the Yah and the Yahweh and whatever, there's always a misunderstanding with regards to that name.
You're
But the name, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, there is no understanding. And he said, this is my name forever. And this is being taught from generation to generation to generation. Of anything else that was used, time and time again.
right.
It's there.
You're absolutely correct. And this is why we highly recommend that people read the Bible, the King James Version, because it is the name, very important, the name of God that
It's a
he
name,
gave.
yes.
But here's something else that's also very important. Think about it. Why did Moses ask that question? Of
Right.
all the questions he could have asked.
But you know what? Even asked the question, the God of Israel could have easily turned around and said, okay, well, you know what? They didn't know me by Jehovah, but you guys could call me Jehovah.
Right.
He could have just said that.
And
It would have been easy.
here's how the God of Israel responded. Like you said, he gave him that. But before he gave him that name, he said to him casually, I am what I am. I am who I
Why are
am.
you questioning me? Why are
Yeah,
you questioning
I am
me?
who I am. And then he told him who he
Exactly.
is, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Case closed,
You can't get any simpler than that. And that's, to
Exactly.
me, is the beauty, because when people are still quibbling over
Yes.
Yah versus Yahweh versus Yahshua versus Elohim and him and whatever, it states the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
So,
That, to me, is
for
beautiful.
me personally, I see the harmony in
Mm.
that conversation between the God of Israel and Moses. And it's all expressed in the scriptures, in the Holy Bible, because Moses asked because he knows how these people
He
think.
knows the people. He
He
knows
knows
the
these
people.
people, right?
Exactly.
And the God of it, well, hey, what are you asking me? I am who am I am. I am who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
And this is
always
who
rude.
I am. He made it clear. So see yourselves. I mean, it's hard for people to say sitting talking to God or whatever. But if you just imagine Moses and God standing there having a chat, and this wisdom is flowing naturally. And now it's so important, it is necessary to document it. But there's only one place on this planet where it's documented, in the Holy Scriptures that were written by us, about us, for us.
And
Beautiful.
that's the big problem, Elder Michael.
Harmony.
People have taken our book and they don't understand it, and they misinterpret it, and they call out all kinds of nonsense which is not even in there. And the one thing I wanted to point out was that before the Bible, before our scriptures, before our forefathers went to England, they didn't have any kind of documentation. They didn't have a covenant. They didn't have any agreement between the people or the rulers or anything. But they took the concept that was from our forefathers and they created something called the Magna Carta.
Yes.
And I know it's like, okay, what the heck are you talking about? Listen, guys, listen, bear with me just for 1 minute. As I said before, they did not have any instructions. So you imagine there are people that's with you and they're telling you, you know what, maybe you should have some rules that people can abide by. And from that came the Magna Carta. And the reason why I bring up the Magna Carta, for several reasons. Number one, as I said before, this was the first document that was actually produced in England that was used to govern the people. But, it was about protecting the rights of the church, protecting the rights of the barons, making prison, illegal imprisonment illegal or whatever. But the point is, this same document formed the basis not only of the Constitution in England today, but also the basis of the Constitution of the United States. Guys, listen, this Magna Carta, which came from the Bible, which was provided by our forefathers, not in the form of the King James at the time, but the way it was laid out, the Magna Carta was based on that type of format.
Exactly.
And the Constitution today of the United States came directly from the Magna Carta.
Right.
Now, even this has a huge history. But look, guys, I'm telling you, that's why it's so important not to discard these things. And this is why we want to get to the King James Version. And
Right.
you'll see how this all plays into, all
All
plays
right.
into the whole development of King
Yeah.
James.
It's a very important point that most people don't get. And this is why we ask people to read the Bible, analyze it, ask questions therefrom, and let us get the full picture, because it is not just the British. Look, the reason why the God of Israel selected these people, from my
Mhm.
small perspective, he saw that international British Empire. Now, I may not be in favor of all the things the British people did, but they did what they had to do. They went out and conquered the world, right? They used the multi-component language that is called English today. English has French, it has Latin, it has German, it has Greek, and God knows what else is in there. The point is, everyone throughout the world could find some residue in this language, some connection, if you will, right? We know that in China, they learn English. So it's not just you have to speak Mandarin, you need to speak English. In Russia, you learn in English, wherever. But why is it that the English language is so important that these other countries find it so necessary to educate their citizens in this language? If they know how to do that, how much more the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? He
Amen to
one.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he is the one that
Yeah.
said to James, if you will, or inspired James to make that
Mhm.
translation, right?
Right.
The English language. Then from there, he went, of course, then they conquered the United States and Canada, and then India. And where did they not conquer? They conquered everybody, right?
Mhm.
Some don't get into the legality of it or not. They did it. And now they left that residue where everyone learns to speak English. As I said,
Mhm.
they did not even change the words, the foreign words. The word kindergarten is still in the English language. Kindergarten is German. The word brassiere is in the English language. My pronunciation may not be the best, but brassiere is French, and you can go on. Czech is French. Of course, the Americans changed the spelling of it, but in
Mhm.
Canada and in England, it's Cheque. The United States is Check.
Yep. Yeah.
But
It,
look
it
at
is.
look at the foundation, the structural
Mhm.
of the process, and you will see
Yeah.
the wisdom of the God of Israel in this process. That's all I'm trying to put forth.
And it's so funny because, as people started understanding what was written in the book, they started to persecute us more, you know. And this is something that's happened time and time and time again. And you're going to see this, it reminds me of the book of Judges. The children of Israel are taken into slave, bondage here and bondage there and bondage there. And it's because eventually, we stopped doing the things that we were supposed to do. But
Yes.
likewise, people were reading our book and they just didn't like us. They wanted to suppress us. And it started way back in 1205
Yeah.
CE with
Actually,
Pope in the third. Was it
it
he
goes
decreed?
before that. It started earlier than that. But
Yeah, well, of course, a lot earlier.
yeah,
But what I'm looking at is, the Israelites went into England with William the Conqueror, and then they were kicked out several
right,
centuries later. But it's because of people like Pope Innocent III, who
right.
decreed that the Israelites were doomed to perpetual servitude because they had crucified Jesus. So he's already setting the stage for, why do we not like these people, right?
So
And
that's a good point, because it brings us to the next stage. The same way that the God of Israel chose James to make the translation, I'm sure
Mhm.
he probably selected one of those demonic popes to interact with us and to try to defeat us, because not only that we have to be enslaved, because it was the decree for our enslavement came from the Pope, Pope Nicholas,
Yep, yes,
right?
it was sanctioned. Yep.
Exactly. So, and keep in mind also that
Oh, goodness.
Christianity is not a religion. It's a culture, it's politics, it's economics, it's all of the above composed into one unit, right? And we can speak for weeks, months, years on that subject. But my point here is that there's two two sides to that coin, if you will. The
Mhm.
good side with the translation, and then the enemy has to step in and put us where we were scheduled to go. Again, we
Mm.
talked about this before in the building of the United States. The British
Mhm.
had to go in and make that clear. Now, they also had to have the translation of the Bible ready
Mhm.
before the slaves touched down in Jamestown, Virginia. Why?
But
Because, I'll be brief on this, because it spoke to our heritage, our lineage. If we had stepped off that slave ship in Virginia and nobody knew who we were, then anyone could claim us. But the God of Israel punished us. He allowed other people to do it, but he never surrendered the title of our
Mhm.
ownership, if to put it that way.
Right. Yes, you make a really excellent point, and it's I'm telling you, there is just like so much stuff out there. But one of the things that you notice, and this is why it's so important when we try to streamline and we focus directly on the King James version of the Bible. But from the time that people understood that the Bible was in existence, from the time that they understood that there was a set of books in existence, they took this, and we had a serious opposition, which you rightfully said is the Catholic Church.
Yes.
They were a serious opposition to the point whereby they stopped us, or they stopped the books from being printed way back. Was it 1229 CE? I think you were actually the one that brought these up.
Right.
They
They
forbid
burned more
people from
Bibles
reading the
than
books,
anybody.
from owning the books.
Yeah.
They forbid people from owning it. They persecuted people who owned it, and they burned. Yeah, they were burning the books. Whatever they found that was related to our instructions, they were burning them.
Yes.
It was a. I'm telling you, it was just such a tragedy.
Yes.
Yeah, starting from all the forbidden books. You
Just
know,
want to just want to acknowledge Albert Cramp's a donation, $20. Thank you so much, Albert. Go ahead.
thank you. Yes,
And Felicia
yes.
Singleton, also $20. Thank you so much, Felicia.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you indeed.
Yeah.
You know,
You're
so,
absolutely correct, Officer Chairman.
so as the books are being written, there is an opposition that is fighting. Do not print this. If you print this, you'll be persecuted. If you print this, you'll be burnt. And whatever they found, they burnt. So when people were set up to print the books, there were other people out there directly from the Catholic Church, you know, out there persecuting anybody that
Yes.
were printing or owning the Bible.
Right.
Could you imagine? It was a crime to own the Bible back then.
That's right. And that helps us to understand what the Catholics and the Vatican and the Pope is all about. Who are they really serving in their
Mm,
idolatry and divination? It tells us very clearly that they're
yeah,
serving the adversary and not the God of Israel. So there should be no concern. Like I've said before, I said, if you are a child of slavery, a Jacobite, and you wanted to be a Hindu, for example, I don't approve of it, but I say, okay, go ahead. If you wanted to be a Sikh, I don't approve, but if you want, I'll say go ahead. But if you say you wanted to be Muslim, I said absolutely not. Christian, absolutely not. Practice Judaism, absolutely not, because those three philosophies had a hand in our enslavement. So I could sanction or approve if you wanted to somebody else going elsewhere, but not the three that had a hand in our enslavement. That is has to be very clearly understood, right? So you have Christianity now rising up, destroying, like you said, the books.
they're trying to destroy every aspect of us.
Yeah.
And you know what? It got so bad. This is how bad it got. Because remember, back in those days, Catholic or the Catholicism was dominant in England.
Yes.
Back in 1290, this
Yes.
is during the time of King Henry III's son, King Edward I.
Right.
He ejected all Israelites from England. So there was up to 40,000 Israelites were forced to flee England, remaining. So England remained Jew-free.
But
So
listen, I have to make this point, Officer Chairman. Sorry to interrupt. It's the same thing today. Please, ladies
well,
and
that's what I'm
gentlemen.
saying. That's
Nothing.
exactly what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's nothing. There's nothing new
Nothing
under the
new.
sun.
Yes.
Nothing new. And this took place until 1656 under Oliver Cromwell. And if we have time, I would love to go into Oliver Cromwell, because this guy, he was so instrumental.
Before we get there,
Him and his great uncle, which
right.
was Thomas Cromwell. And it's funny what happened to them both. Anyways, go ahead.
Before we get to Oliver Cromwell, we did a good job too. Let us talk about Guy Fawkes. Let us really bring out what's in the Pope's mind. Let us bring out what is coming from the Vatican.
But even before that, Elder Michael,
I know.
There were people that set up to write the books, because you're close to you're close to getting to where we need to get to, right? With Guy Fawkes.
Go ahead.
But before that, you had people like Wycliffe.
Yes, I know.
Right?
Yeah. They did an excellent job. But I just wanted to show you the enemy. I want to highlight the enemy for a minute here. Before I get to Guy Fawkes, however, let's talk about, a lot of people have heard, a lot of us that went to school and took British history, we learned about the Spanish Armada, that war. How did you think that war got started, ladies and gentlemen?
But Elder Michael, you got to go back before that, because
I know.
No, you have to. Look.
You have a lot of time.
No.
Okay, go ahead. I'll wait. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
All right, sorry. Okay. I'm looking at the fact that these guys, right?
Yes.
They have been put into place, and I'm saying by our Father, the God of Israel, right? He's put in place to set up, to start this process going with the writing of the Bible, right? The process has started. But as soon as these guys have started that process, they are, they die. And it's not even when they die. This is like years later, 31 years later. Okay. Wycliffe, he's been accused of heresy. And then 44 years after his death, the church, they dig up, they're so angry with him writing a Bible. This is the madness, guys. This is madness. They're so angry with him that they dig up his bones. And they burn them and they scatter them because they're so angry. They didn't get to execute him, so this is what they have to do.
But wait a minute.
I'm trying to get at, Elder Michael.
But you know what? I have to give them credit for that, because he was buried on their property. Remember, every shrine is in the cemetery. So
but look, they wanted to punish him so badly that they had to take his bones and burn them.
I got you.
That was their retribution.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But then shortly after that, you got another a few hundred years, and then you've got the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
Right, which is another form of suppressing us.
Yeah.
Punishing us, because they don't want us to read the book. They don't want the book to be in circulation. They are afraid, I don't know, one-off, but they are petrified. They don't want people to read the books. So now they bring this new thing called the Inquisition, where they are executing people for practicing or for following
anything that's contrary. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let us go back a little bit then to your point, Officer Charmaine, and talk about what happened before that, or why they did what they did, the Vatican. Because as you said earlier, our forefathers had established the doctrine in Northern Africa, right? As a matter of fact, I always like to go back to Cyrene, right, where there's a Simon there who carried the cross for Jesus back in the day. I find that to be very, very significant, because it is almost, carrying the cross is more than just carrying a 2x4 on your shoulder. Carrying the cross is trying to teach and live according to the doctrine of truth and survive, right? In a world that is totally 190% against you, right? Totally against you. And that's why I find it fascinating that the North Africans did what they did. But as we said earlier, they made the translation into Latin. Now, Latin is Aramaic, Egyptian, and a little bit of Greek. I call it more Phoenician than Greek, Canaanite language. But anyway, the
And
point is,
a little bit of Arabic as well.
yes, the point
Mhm,
is they made that translation and it was called ecclesiastical Latin or priestly
mhm.
Latin. Now, when
Yeah.
the Romans came on board, they also spoke a Latin, but theirs was what we call the vernacular or the street Latin, the vulgar. And Jerome made the translation, but he didn't translate. He just copied what our forefathers had, and they made it into the language for the street people to read because that's what the Romans spoke. It
You
was
know what?
priest.
What you're saying is a very important point.
Yeah,
For the most part, when before the King James version, up into
exactly.
the King James version,
Yeah,
everybody just wanted to know what was in the book.
right.
So there's like, okay, so it went from Greek to Latin, from Latin to Greek, or from whatever to whatever. You know, everybody's just what's in the book. You know, and as we said, you know, the Catholic Church did not want this to happen. They
Right.
did not want to have a copy. They were angry, they were mad, and so this is why the persecutions happened.
That's right. And the reason why they didn't want it to happen is because they were comfortable with the Vulgate or the vulgar version. They could not understand the original Latin version that our forefather, the priestly or ecclesiastical version that our forefather were using. That was too
Yeah.
high for the Catholic priests.
Yes,
Remember,
yes. They
Catholic priests were
butchered
not,
it.
yeah, they
Yeah.
weren't educated. They were
Mhm.
just up on the street because, and we'll get to this maybe later where we talk about the Reformation and
Mhm.
especially the Protestants in England, they were mad with the
Mhm.
Catholics because you know you could go to a priest, give him a few dollars, and get your sins forgiven.
Of course,
Yeah,
apparently.
they can do that, and they're like, "What are you doing? That's madness." So
Yeah.
to have an English translation now by James and his scholars would show up the priests, the Catholic priesthood. It would show
Mhm.
that they're really ignorant, that they're really not telling the truth, that what they have is they're not speaking or teaching. First of all, they shouldn't have been, but they're not
Yeah.
teaching from the priestly version. They're teaching from the Vulgate version, which is filled with errors. That's why
Yeah.
it's called the
It was.
Vulgate. Vulgar.
It was. Yes. It was a butchered version
Yes.
of
So now,
our book.
right. So now anyone that tries to make a correction or tries to make another version that is going to be of a higher standard will show up the priest, the Catholic priesthood. And they didn't want that to happen because they had complete control. They ruled the entire world. Like you
Mm.
said, they ruled and they had the congregation in Britain that ran the country. They had, like in today, as I was saying earlier, who do you think is the president of the United States? Catholic. Who do you think is the president of Russia? Catholic. We can go on and on and on and on. Everywhere they are the same people. And even Wycliffe and those guys, they too were Catholic. But they try to do the right thing.
They
And
they
that,
try to separate themselves
yes,
from, and
they,
this is where you got the whole Henry VIII and
yes,
the Great Book, which came
right,
into play. And
right,
there is a question here that says there are so many versions of the Bible. For a first timer, how would
yes.
they know which version is correct? Now, this is why we're
We're here.
spoken this way
Yeah,
in order to lead up to this point.
that's
Because as I said before, there were people were just trying to understand what was written, and
right.
that's why there were so many books written, because they just wanted to know. But the
Yeah,
Catholic Church, they were stopping people from actually making these books, reading them, owning them,
mhm,
and then they put their own one, as Elder
right.
Michael said, in circulation, which is the vulgar one,
Yeah.
as you mentioned.
And this is
They
why
put that
we're
into circulation to confuse
that
things.
confuse people. But this is
Right.
why we're given the backdrop. This is why we're given that environmental picture so that people can understand what really happened and why there's a need for that King James version because it's going to
So,
correct all the mistakes that occurred in the past. Here's another
so
way that I like to put it.
mhm,
When the God of Israel, I remember King David wanted to build a temple, and God of
mhm,
Israel said, "No, but your son will build a temple." And then Solomon wanted to do it, and then there were instructions given to
mhm,
go to to Lebanon and talk to Hiram, who was
mhm.
the king there or president or whatever, and let him send his workers to help lay the foundation for that temple. So that temple then that was in Jerusalem was built in part by strangers. right? And then, of course, Solomon took that structure, overlaid it with gold, and put a situation in place where the God of Israel could be worshipped, and from a high standard. But they did the foundation, and as a matter of fact, today your masons today will tell you that they built the temple. I used to live in a place in Atlanta called Hiram back in the day. Of course, there was a Masonic temple there, and they used that expression in ignorance. You will see some of the older versions of the Bible, the King James version, had what people will say as Masonic emblems and so on and so forth. Now, of course, all those are gone with the correction that came, I think, in 1840 or whatever it was. But the point I'm making is the God of Israel is amazing. He
Yes.
used the talent that was
He's
available.
instrumental. Yeah.
Yes, he used the
Mhm.
talent that was available because we were just coming out into the promised land, and we
Yeah.
may not have had all of that skill set ready. Go ahead.
No, you make a really good point.
Yeah.
The God of Israel, He put us into, you
Yes,
know, Israel, and it was already built up for us. It was like,
that's
okay,
right. Yeah,
go to your home.
another
We've
point
got-
you're making there. That's another one because we had orchards that were planted. All we had to do was go reap the crops, right?
Mhm.
But the Canaanites planted all of that. So what do you say? You're hungry? Well, I can't eat that apple. I can't eat that banana because the enemy. I'm saying,
Exactly.
bring it on,
Exactly.
man. Bring it on. Is that all you got? So
Right.
wisdom. We're talking wisdom here. So
Yeah.
Solomon got Hiram and his workers to lay the foundation and build this temple for the God of Israel. And then Solomon went in and enhanced it to a higher
Mhm.
level. They don't know what was in it. All they knew is the structure.
And as you said it, it's the same way with the King
Same with
James version
James.
of the Bible. So
Yes,
the question that came up earlier, there are so many versions out there. Which one is the one that we should be reading? And right off the bat, it's the King James version of the Bible. The Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries ascribe to the 1611 King James version, authorized King James version of the Bible. And
right.
as we've mentioned many times, there were several attempts for the book to be written, and the people that tried to write the book, and this is when it is a spiritual, a highly spiritual
That's the
battle,
point. Yes.
because these people were persecuted and executed. And they weren't even Israelites. They were just trying to get the books together.
They were
Who knows? Maybe
Christians.
they were somewhere down the road. But the point is, these guys trying to put this together, just like John Brown when he tried to help, the
Yeah.
Israelites
Yeah.
during the time of slavery.
William Wilberforce.
William, all of these guys, they were persecuted. They were looked upon negatively. You have the Tyndale's version of the Bible. Now, this was another crazy one.
Yeah. If you hold that
After
minute, Officer Charmaine, just
go,
a minute.
go ahead.
Because you brought up the situation there, I want to talk about this because people, like what we said at the beginning, you don't read the Bible because it's a white man's book, quote unquote.
Mhm.
You know, our freedom, we are slaves. We were slaves in the land, right? But our freedom was engineered, orchestrated by a man that didn't look like us. William Wilberforce, John Brown, Thaddeus Stevens, all of these guys. That you
Yeah,
have Quakers leading us all the way across the waters into Canada, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera. And it's beautiful the way the God of Israel set this precedence, this wisdom is
yeah,
phenomenal. And it's not just one time, over and over and over and over. He's doing all this great job for us. It's time that we come home. It's time for
yeah,
us to learn to appreciate the wisdom of our Father. Stop listening to all that nonsense out there and talking about the
mhm.
white man's this and the white man made. No, no, it had nothing to do with.
Yes, exactly. Get over that stuff.
Yeah,
That stuff is for people that they have nothing else to do, but they want to focus on things that are not really progressive in their life. This kind of stuff
exactly,
is progressive. Understanding who you are and your purpose in life, that is progressive. Right?
exactly.
Not
And
getting caught up in this thing that just goes round like those wheels that the little gerbils running. That's anyways.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Felicia is using my term, the Hellboys. You're right, Elder. You're right, Felicia.
exactly.
Yeah, and don't forget the
Yeah.
Decepticons, Felicia. They work together, and But the point I'm
Yeah.
making, to your point, Officer Charmaine, and it is a very clever situation. There's a
It is.
thin line because
But
he did not want
okay,
us to correct the errors in the book.
so
Neither did
right.
they, but they couldn't stop James from doing the job that he did. Excellent job.
But Elder Michael, what I'm trying what I'm hoping people really understand
Yes.
is the amount of effort and work that actually went into establishing the
We
King James version. It
Dr.
was
Charmaine,
a
just a minute.
battle. It was
We're
a
gonna
war.
we we're gonna have to have a second section for this, a part two to this, because and then we're gonna have to flush all of that out.
Yeah, we haven't even
Because
touched.
yeah,
Yes.
because there's so much detailed information there that we don't want that to be just flushed down. We want people to really stop and think about this and bring it out. So
Yeah,
maybe we'll come back.
it's very true. It
Yeah.
is very true because and it doesn't just stop at the King James. I'm telling you, it
Oh
is
no, that's where it
so
begins.
incredibly. That's where it begins.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
right.
before I
That's
forget,
your
let me just say
yeah.
this one thing. I want to show our audience how things really work. When we talk about this Christian concept, that we're not talking about a religion, we're talking about a philosophical process, we're talking about a cultural process, we're talking about a
Mhm.
political process. And this is what I'm saying
But about a
today,
pagan, the highly pagan
highly
process
pagan,
that
idolatrous.
that
Yes,
is serving another god.
yes, right.
In addition to serving another God, it
Yes.
is designed to stop the children of Israel from serving their God, the God of
Amen.
Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. It's
Amen.
a huge system, a huge industry. It's extremely deep, it's extremely highly spiritual, and it's designed to keep us away from serving our God and
Exactly.
to glorify theirs.
Exactly, because we had like I was going to say that when the Vatican recognized that James was going to do what he wanted to do, and instead of what, and don't forget, James was a big Christian, and he was also a Mason, right? But here's a man is going against the status quo and doing what the God of Israel has inspired him to do. And
Mhm.
he's not alone in this, but he is resilient. He is going to do this by any means necessary. Now, the Vatican initiated a contact, and this is something that's very important because
Mm.
today we have a situation where Russia and Ukraine is engaging in conflict. Back then, it was Spain and Britain, and you've
Mhm.
heard of the Spanish Armada, and I think you should make yourself familiar with that and do what you have to do. But
Yes.
something happened that the Spanish and the Vatican did not expect.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that happens.
Yes. So
But
I'm not going to get into it anymore, but I'm just saying
yes,
something
okay.
happened that was not
All right.
natural. And maybe the audience can look at that, and the next time we come, we can flush it out.
Right. Yes. And so because we can go deep and we right now we are constrained when it comes to time.
Yes.
We're going to start our second
Yes.
session
We're gonna have
because
a
yes,
piece.
everybody's asking for the part two. Yes, I'm telling you, there's a lot to learn from
Yeah.
this. There's so much information. Sometimes it's so overwhelming because the information, it gets to you.
Right.
But what I would like to start the next session off with is what happened to Tyndale, because I think his version was very instrumental to our current King James version of the Bible.
Right.
But we'll start off our second session with this.
The other point I want to make as well is, their comments about the number of different versions.
Mm-hmm.
It's very deceptive, but it works. I tell you this.
It was a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It
The
was,
enemy wanted, as we've shown you examples, the enemy wanted to destroy what James was doing. They
Mhm.
failed. They
They
failed.
failed.
Okay. However, they did not
Mhm.
stop.
They
They
didn't stop.
Here's what they did. They
They
started to make their own translations.
the Elder Michael. They didn't just make their own translation. They flooded.
Of
They
course.
flooded the
Of course.
market with
Yes.
hundreds of different versions. So
Yes. And that's only in the English language. We can count all the other languages, over hundreds of them, some in part and some in whole. But my point is, they are still resilient in trying to stop us from doing what. I just wanted our audience to know.
Let us cut them off from being a people.
There you go. Psalms 83,
It's
right?
not something to be taken lightly.
Yes.
This is what's happening. This is what they're trying to do.
It's a very good point. You go tell anyone on the street that we're Israelites, they're like, what? Huh? What is that? Bro, what you talking about, bro? Like, like, give me a break, bro. And so they look at it as if it's something that, is a total, I don't know, something. Are you crazy to say that? But that is what it's all about. The enemy has done an excellent job, and
they've done a number on us.
Yeah, we have a donation here from Lucy Smith. Thank you so much. Lucy.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
13.99. Thank you. But this is the key that we're trying to bring forth. Don't allow the enemy to dictate your behavior. Don't not allow strangers to dictate your behavior. Yes,
and there is a reason why our elder Shadrach, and the funny thing is, if you really want to know, you can also find it in this book.
That's right.
The history of the Bible. But there's a reason why he said right from the get-go, it's like, sometimes you do these things and you're not 100% sure until you actually go out there and you actually start to do the research. But there's a reason why he said from day one, the King James version of the Bible, the 1611, and this is the one that we've always used. We don't even bother with the others. Exactly. And you'll see why when we continue to talk about the different translations and how the King James Bible was actually, how it actually came together. But I'm telling you, I am so proud that, we have our elder Shadrach and the council and all the brethren, and even you guys that are listening, because obviously there's something that's in you that's seeking truth, whether you are home or whether you are trying to come home, you are seeking something. And I pray that this resonates with you and that, you find it in you somewhere, and that you are able to come home. But, until we come back with the rest of this story, remember, we focus on the King James version of the Bible. This is our instruction book. Yeah. And as we said right at the beginning, it's about Israelite, it's for Israelite, and it was written by Israelites. Whether it was written directly or indirectly, this is the book that we use. And this is the book that has our Father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and God of Jacob's instructions.
And the same way that if you have a Mercedes-Benz, you don't take the manual and make changes, change the name of the parts. Why would you change the name of God to Yabba Dabba Doo? Why would you change the Sabbath day from the 7th day to the 7th of the other calendar, the 14th, the 21st? Like, why? Why do you do these things? Why would you celebrate Christmas? It's not in the Bible. Why would you call yourself a Christian? Name one Christian in the Bible. There isn't any. Why would you practice Judaism? There isn't anything there.
Romans 11.
Yeah. So this is why it's important for us to have a clear understanding of the background, the environment from which this wisdom came forth. And like I said, Solomon didn't build the temple by himself. And, and there are things that Joseph paved the way in Egypt, and all of these things are important. Queen Esther in Persia, very significant. Daniel, and as we said earlier. So we have to learn the historical connection so that today we can know how to chart the course for the future.
Absolutely. I want to say so much more, but I think I'm going to leave it at that. And hopefully we'll get back together and discussion. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Peace.